Well, hello. I'm Elle. This is the lovely Jess Owens from the channel of the same name that YouTube never brings up, even when I type it in correctly. Jess Owens, like, you must know Jesse Owens, the athlete. I'm like, no, I mean my friend. So we're here for another BookTube after party, which is just us talking for a while about whatever. We specifically asked all of you on my Instagram stories if you had ideas for the next chat. So we might go through some of those. And of course, you can leave suggestions in the comments for future chats. But it's just kind of a chill hangout session, which is always fun. But I'll let you, I think most people know who you are and you were on before, but I'll let you introduce yourself really quick.
Hi, I am me, she is I, Jess Owens. That's the name of my channel. I guess I call myself a booktuber. I don't read as much as other people, but I cover a lot of bookish drama or bookish news also, but then I also read random things. And usually I have a co-pilot, a co-host, Nigel, but he is sleeping with his father. An extension of Father's Day. So I didn't want to interrupt him.
Yes, I will. Last time we got a lot of Nigel. We didn't really see Luna. I'm going to show the good people Luna what she's doing, because she's also sleeping, but she's sleeping across the room from me. Her eyes are probably open now. There she is over there, looking adorable. The cutest doggy.
He is.
So one of the things you guys mentioned was that you would always be down for more dog chat. So we'll start with dog chatting. So Luna, for her first time ever, got groomed professionally. Because we've always given her baths ourselves, but in this house, the drains in the bathroom they're just kind of like open pits. You know what I mean? Like,
there's nothing like on the top. Oh
yeah, like one of them is it's just a hole, and you can put a stopper in, but I don't know, because then it feels weird to put a stopper in when you're cleaning your dog, because if she's really dirty, you don't want her sitting in her dirty water or whatever. And then the other one, it's kind of just like a cover over the drain with little holes in it, but the holes are big enough where her hair would get through. And I'm like, if this clogged, I don't think I can take that off. So then, because she's got a lot of hair, especially when she's shedding. So anyway, we decided to get her groomed. And she's already always super white and glowy because she's so white. But when we got her and picked her up, she's so white now. She's so white. And her tail, I'm going to be a little gross for a second. She has a curly tail, so you always have a nice view of her little butthole. And that whole area is all like perfect too.
How did she react to it?
Oh my gosh. So when we got there, there was like other dogs being, their hair was being, because she didn't get a haircut. She doesn't really need it. Her coat doesn't get like that. But when they finally took her and went to bring her in the back, she just laid down, as she does, because she also doesn't like being away from us. So it was cute, because it's like the guy was kind of a bigger guy, right? And he was like picking her up, and he had to carry her all the way to the back. She's a big dog. And we're like, oh, and they said it'd be 3 or 4 hours, because they were also going to try to get some of the fur, because she sheds here and there. There's a couple times a year that she sheds a lot, but she still, loses hair occasionally. Yeah. So they were going to do the what is it called? I don't remember what it's called, like a furminator or something.
Yeah, to pull out.
Yeah.
I don't know the name.
Yeah, they were going to do that and give her a bath and do a bunch of stuff. They said it'd be like 3 or 4 hours. And when they called us to let us know, like, oh, hey, it'll probably be only, 1 more hour, they said that she did really well, except for she had an accident when she first, was brought back, I think, because she was scared. But they said it was before her bath, so it was okay. And then on top of that, she was really scared of the super loud hair dryer. But otherwise, she was good. But when they said she had an accident, Sean and I were like, did she go number 1 or number 2? Because most dogs, sometimes they get scared, they tinkle a little, but she has this weird habit. I've never had a dog do this, where when she goes to new places, especially new people's houses, she has to go number 2. It's the weirdest thing. Most dogs will mark their territory going number 1 or something, or they have to go to the bathroom because of the drive, but she'll find a spot and go number 2. even when she doesn't really have to. So you're like, Luna, why are you always doing that? So we couldn't, I don't know. We don't know if they meant she went number 1 or number 2. Because they said it was fine because it was before she had a bath. And I'm like, I feel like dogs go number 1 a lot. It's not that big a deal. So I'm like, does she go number 2 at the groomers? I don't know.
Well, that's good. If I ever took Nigel to a groomer, they'd probably charge me extra to deal with how chaotic he would ask, or he would need a Benadryl before, because he likes to be naked and dirty. He does not want to be clean. He doesn't want a harness. He doesn't want clothes, even though I want him to love clothes. He just wants to be nude and dirty. And
I've never been a dog clothes person, but I do like dogs with bandanas.
That's those are so cute. I want to get one.
Crumbly sounds. It's granola bar.
I have so many random dog things in various carts, and I have like a pack. It's like 4 or 5 like different bandanas that are so cute, and I just need to get them because they would look adorable on him.
He doesn't even wear on a normal basis anymore a collar. We only really put the one that goes with her leash on, but around the house and stuff, she's like totally free in that regard. We also, since it was her first time, we're like, I don't know how she's gonna feel coming out of it. I want her to associate the groomers with happy things. So we bought her some dog cookies, and we bought her a new toy. It's a cow, because Luna used to 100% destroy all of her toys, like crazy destroy. And when I got back in town from my trip visiting Jesse and Jade, I was like, I want to get a present for Luna. So on the way home from the airport, we stopped by Target and I got her a panda, like a little small panda. It's pretty torn up now, but not like she used to. I'm like, okay, I think we can start buying her cute stuffed animal toys that are still durable. So I bought her this little blue cow, and it is super durable, and it's cute. She already likes it. And I'm like, yay.
I hope it's a phase that Nigel gets past, because he destroys everything.
Yeah, he's still young, right?
Yeah, he's 1 year and 4 months. So, but every time we go to the vet, we usually go, the pet store here is called Arcoplanet, and we'll go and take him in there and get him a toy. And sometimes it lasts 8 minutes. Sometimes it lasts 2 weeks. It really depends. It's like, those little, I guess maybe all his little jagged, crowded teeth, he always works, especially with dogs. He just like, that's his. Yeah. He's like, I want to get to what is squeaking, and he wants to rip it out. And
yeah, I specifically made sure, because most of the toys were squeakers, and I was like, I gotta find one that's a non-squeak toy, because same thing. And I get it. I mean, I have weird, like, compulsive, if there's like paint chipping, all I want to do is peel it. You know, like, so I get, as a dog, if there's something squeaking in there, all you want to do is get it out.
So,
yeah, I get it. So I just want one that she can chew on, but also like cuddle with, because she does. Yeah. I don't know if I sent you the picture of her with her head on her panda.
No,
so I would like small. It's so cute. I'll send it to you.
I wish he would. So I have. I mean, maybe this is embarrassing, but I have stuffed animals. I really love giraffes.
I think so.
I don't know if you've ever seen my big, tall giraffe, Augustus. But then I have multiple small plush giraffes. And he tries to eat them. And I'm like, no, you cannot have my giraffes. You already destroyed my SpongeBob. And so this is unacceptable. And we got him a giraffe, but it's made by the company Kong. And at first it was looking good. And then he destroyed an ear. So... But I'm like, you're not going to have my stuffed animals, you little demon. I refuse.
Yeah, I think that a lot of dogs, they're pretty puppy-like until around 2.5, and then they chill out. It depends on the breeds, of course, too, and what they were originally bred for, what those instincts are. Because, obviously, certain dogs will have certain behavioral instincts. And so, I don't know, what were Frenchies even bred for? I don't actually know.
We watched like a video on it, and I don't know, because there's such a high, like, so many things have breeded over time, and that's why they usually have a lot of issues, because of so much breeding, and I can't remember. I should Google that. I should know that as a Frenchie mom fact. I should be able to say, fun fact, did you know? Because yeah, I don't know. I know that, I mean, his personality is very common for Frenchies. I know that, and he's just a sasspot. But hopefully, you know, by year 2.
I told you she loves him. When I showed her this last weekend, I was like, look at my friend's dog. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love that dog. Because she had, well, I should say we had, but it was more her dog. When I was in college, I like convinced her to get this bull mastiff. And he has passed away. He passed away a couple months ago. He was very old, but he was the sweetest dog. But he was supposedly a bull mastiff. We think he was mixed with boxer. Because he was small for a bull. Like, those are massive dogs. And his head never really got as big. But he was so sweet. And he has that kind of like smushed face. But his ears are floppy, right? Obviously, they're much smaller than huge ears. But she likes those kind of wrinkly, scrunched up dogs. She thinks they're adorable. So, yeah, she loved him. I'm just giving you the side eye all the time.
He's such a diva. So when I did the announcement video for the book club, I had like multiple comments. Well, some people were like, I thought I was going to be a baby. And I was like, no. But some people were like, oh, I was hoping it was a brother or sister for Nigel. And I was like, me too. But Nigel's not ready. He would be a terrible older sibling. He needs some structure first.
We were looking up, there's a different, like sometimes certain rescue organizations that have specific breeds. We were looking up an Akita rescue, and there was this one that I thought was so cute. But we were like wanting to see if maybe Luna could meet him first, because it's not like golden retrievers, which are usually typically super sweet dogs. I mean, Akitas are sweet and loyal to you, but you just don't know if they've lived alone. She's good with other dogs when she's around them, but I'm like, how would she do though if it was like living with us, right? So I was like hoping that she could meet him, but when I went to check again, somebody must have already adopted him, and I was like, dang.
Yeah.
And then there's another dog that we think is really cute, and it's a girl. She's not an Akita, she's just a big mutt, and she's really, really cute. She looks like the sweetest dog. Like, all her pictures are of her like smiling really big. You know, like when dogs look really happy, that's what pictures are, is her looking really happy, and she's super cute. She's an Australian Shepherd, I think. No, wait, Australian like sheepdog maybe, mixed with German Shepherd, they think.
Ooh, okay.
So she's kind of like got the colors of a German Shepherd, but she's a little smaller and she's floppy ears instead of up. But she's very cute, and I want to adopt her. But that's another instance where we'd have to see how Luna does. So, and they also encourage typically, I think, I mean, I'm not a dog expert, but just from what I know, at least with Akitas, but it's probably common for other breeds, they actually say the opposite sex of the dog is better than having two of the same, like two male dogs or two female dogs are less likely to get along. But again, it all depends on the dog or the breed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How you train them. So, but it's just, I want another dog. I want a sibling. I told you I'll ask you, like I'll be getting ice for my drink, and then I'll be like, do you want an ice cube? Do you want a sister?
Makes perfect sense. I should probably look that up with Frenchies, because ideally I would just want another boy Frenchie, but I don't know how they would act. I feel like Nigel's selfish. He doesn't like, he's like, if he's sitting over there 3 feet away, he's mad if you're up here on the couch. And then especially like if I'll sit on Andrew's lap and he gets mad. He's like, Like, he's like, I want to be up there. Let me in your space. He always wants to be on your lap. Like,
I think that he is protective of you also.
Maybe.
Because Luna, like, sometimes if Sean and I, like, kind of a similar, if we, like, snuggle up on the couch or if, like, he gives me a hug or something, she doesn't growl, but she's like, huh. And you're just like, Luna,
what's wrong with you? That sounds, Nigel does that. I'm just like, ugh. But he just, all the space, he has multiple beds, great, but he was like, no, I want to sit on your lap and cause chaos right here. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know. When we went to Switzerland, we had him, he stayed with someone who had 2 Frenchies, and he's always a little, I don't want to say aggressive. He's a little aggressive at first, but then he had a ball, and they just played all weekend, and I'm like, oh, maybe he needs a sibling.
I took a video. So Luna's gotten in this weird habit. Oh my gosh, we've been talking about our dogs for like 15 minutes, but I'll have to put timestamps in the description for when we like talk about something else if we ever do. Luna's gotten in this weird habit of like getting in staring contests with me where she'll just look at me like kind of lovingly but a little expectant, like, are we gonna go snuggle right now? Or but I took one video. So she also like yesterday, it was the weekend, right? And Sean was in the back of the house and I went to go to the bathroom. I closed the door and I just hear her like kind of crying for me. And I'm like, so I like texted Sean like from the bathroom, like, will you call Luna to you, please? Because I can just hear her crying outside the door. She's very attached. Like she doesn't like when she has not voluntarily had you out of her sight. Like if she goes outside to go to the bathroom, she's fine. But if like the air conditioning shuts a door or something, then she's like crying. So she also doesn't like it when I close the door to the bathroom, as I was just saying, and she'll wait for me. And because when Sean's not home and I leave the door open, she'll just lick me while I go to the bathroom. And I'm like, so anyway, I closed the door and then I'm going to show you this video clip. I closed the door and I walked out and she's just standing there waiting for me. Look at her silly little face. This is in time. This is not paused. She's just staring at me.
She's like, it took you long enough. How dare you leave me out here?
So if I had the audio on, I was telling her we were having a staring contest and I told her she lost because she blinked. But like for a long time, she'll like stare. Yeah.
How dare you betray her?
She's so cute. Anyway, we should probably talk about something right now.
I will move on. What's next?
We can always talk about. So I'll read some of the things. So I'm gonna read a silly one first, and I gotta see your opinion. Okay. So when I asked people to send in things, one person said, "Why are peanut butter M&Ms the best M&Ms?" Have you had peanut butter M&Ms?
Yes, unfortunately, I don't like peanut butter though. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like your opinion doesn't.
But crispy M&Ms. Crispy M&Ms are the best M&M that has ever existed.
Years ago, when I was really little and they first came out with crispy M&Ms, they were so good. My mom and I loved them. But I feel like the new crispy, I tried them once and I'm like, this isn't the same.
I haven't had the new ones, but the old ones when they were in the blue package,
yes,
iconic. I don't know why they took those away. So good.
They always.
But yeah, I haven't tried the new ones, but I just stick to milk chocolate. I'm plain. I don't like peanut butter. Nuts.
I have to shout out this one sandwich I used to eat all the time that they no longer have. It was at Einstein's, and it was some kind of like, I think it was a turkey sandwich or something, and it had this tomato dip sauce, and it was on this like delicious bread. And then I got rid of it, and I was like, why? Every time you find something that you're like, this is the best thing ever.
Yes, the best thing. Sprite Remix. I don't know if you ever had Sprite Remix.
I have not. I don't think I have.
The berry, one of the best beverages of all time. And it's not, I just need them to bring it back.
I on the back to the topic of M&Ms, I like the peanut butter and then the peanut. Those are my favorites. Plain is okay, but I feel like it's a lot of, like, I like a little bit of saltiness with my sweet, you know? Mm-hmm. I can't, if I'm gonna have, what were you gonna say?
I don't reach for M&Ms that often. But if it is, it's milk chocolate. But yeah, I don't. But yeah, I don't like nuts. So I know a lot of people love peanut M&Ms, and I will literally, if that was the only thing I had to eat, I would just eat the chocolate around it and get rid of it.
Lick it a lot.
Yeah, that's it. Throw it away. How wasteful, but no.
Well, I agree with this. I think they're amazing. They're better than, I say Reese's Pieces. I know other people say Reese's Pieces, which is probably what it is, but I like saying Reese's Pieces. They're better than Reese's Pieces. And I'm like, this is your thing. The peanut butter is your thing. Why are yours not as good? Anyway, bookish stuff. Well, we can mention there's two books that we have both read and completed recently that we've both read, which would be Evicted, which was depressing, and then The Maidens, which was a thriller, and I'm not usually a thriller reader. So
you read it.
Yeah.
Evicted.
Depressing.
I think that'll stick with me forever. Just the stories. I know that. I think he changed the names, right, of the people.
Yeah, he did.
Identities, but I still like.
Oh no, you're frozen.
Oh, after reading that book, I was just like, "What is life?"
I know.
It was just, but I mean, it was so good, but heartbreaking.
I think that a lot of the things discussed in that video are like almost, I don't know how else to word it. I'm just going to use, they're like triggering based off of the way politics plays around with certain terms or social, like certain programs in American society that people can use and things that have been so politicized that when you hear the word, you instantly have either an image of a person that uses it or you have an opinion about it. And I think what this book did really well is, one, it's just, I feel so much so just presenting the facts, because Matthew Desmond really, I think, made a lot of effort to keep his own opinions separate. He even made the decision, even though it's typical to write those sorts of things in first person because it's an observation, he would write it with himself removed as much as possible. So it's third person. So it's like, here's what is happening. And then he would have certain laws or certain policies or something like that, statistics to go along whatever was relevant with what was currently happening so that you as the reader have more context. And I mean, I think the name, for anyone that doesn't know, Evicted is about the eviction process in America, but specifically he did his research in Milwaukee, in a couple different places too. But either way, I feel like he does such a good job of just presenting the information. And then the things I'm stating about his intentions and removing himself as much as possible are things he talks about at the end of the book. I'm not just like, this is clearly what he meant to do. He says it himself. But I think it's just very eye-opening. And I also think that there's a lot of even stereotypes that I have to, you know, my first instinct when I hear certain things and I'm like, that's actually not what it's like, or maybe that's not what it's like everywhere, or whatever the case is. I just think that if anybody has ever heard anything about eviction, welfare, the landlord-tenant relationship, anything like those, or public housing, shelters, those sorts of things, I think we have a very naive perspective and we don't even realize it, because it shouldn't, it's like something you don't think there's more to, and then you read about it. And it's, I think the book is really highlighting the way some people profit off of the hardships and hard times of other people, and in a lot of ways almost contribute to them almost staying there so that they can continue to profit. So it's a very good read. I think, again, everything gets politicized. So I think it's very depressing read. So you often have to take breaks, as did I.
I was like, no, I've got to put this down for a few days, but everything you said, just like how much money people make off the poor, which like in your mind doesn't make sense, because like, how do you make money from poor people? But just the cycle of eviction and just how they get behind. And I think those things like public housing, like EBT or food stamps, whatever you want to call it, and things that we have prejudices or preconceived notions about, and because we think it's just one way. Like before, just thinking like, well, if you got evicted or if you're in a shelter or you're homeless, it must be your fault. It must be because you didn't do such and such. And I think with politics and like public, however it's perceived, it's kind of they try to make it seem that way with the whole, you know, American pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. And reading this book and just some other books I've been reading as well have just really cemented, like, it's not always, a lot of the times, out of the control of that person. So a lot of these people who were getting kicked out of homes or whatever, they were maybe working multiple jobs. And
I think it's also important to note, like, sometimes it is quote unquote their fault, right? 'Cause, like, we don't want to always act like every hardship is just like, how could this have happened? You know, like sometimes it's somebody made a mistake, but I think it's important, even in those circumstances, a mistake or a period of someone's life where maybe they don't make the best decisions, I don't feel like should push them into the ground for the rest of their life or the majority of their life, or push them to go even into more desperate situations. Because I think one example of something that I feel like is one of those, like, I don't know what else these people are supposed to do, is a part of the book that talks about women who end up calling the police because they're being abused, that gets listed as a disturbance call the same way like loud music and stuff does. And if there's enough disturbance calls, the police get annoyed because typically when you think disturbances, you think this is something that should be managed by the landlord, like loud noises and things. But a person being abused should not be categorized under the same thing as, you know, like, oh, their music's too loud or something. But the police will basically tell, in these circumstances anyway, the landlords, hey, you need to get this person, this keeps happening and we keep having to come out here and we don't want to have to keep coming out here because we got other things to do and we only have so many, you know, resources available to us. So you got to handle it. And then the landlord doesn't want the police coming. Also, a lot of these landlords, the housing that they're renting out to people is not up to par. This is not all landlords, of course, right? But in this book, the ones that they're showcasing here, the houses are not up to city code whatsoever. So they also don't want any kind of anyone involved with the government or the city or anything there, because then they'll have to pay to upgrade things and they don't want to have to pay anything. And so they end up, these women, they end up getting faced with eviction because they called the police when they were being harmed. And then a lot of times, especially if they have kids, they're like, I have to have a place to stay. So they'll just not call anymore and they'll just, you know, and like, you're like, well, what the heck are they supposed to do? They don't have somewhere else to go. This is not like you know what? I just saw this apartment up for sale down the street. Not to mention, a lot of times women with kids, the book talks about the amount of times that people will get turned away because of their kids, especially in poorer communities where you're worried about crime and gangs and things, and people want to keep their kids inside to keep them safe. But a kid locked up inside, they might mess up, you know, they might color on the walls, or they might clog the toilet or whatever. Yeah. The landlords are like, I don't want kids. So they'll be like, this is a kid-free place or whatever. And there's anti-discriminatory laws, but people do whatever they want. And it's not like somebody who's poor and desperate can be like, you know what, let me get my lawyer. Like, they don't have the time. So anyway.
Guess not this one. And then there was the family who her son had asthma, I think. Did he have asthma?
Yes.
Or I don't know if this directly impacts the story, but they lost a family member, I think, a family member, a friend or something. And anyway, he wasn't processing the trauma right or something. He had an outburst at school and he, like, I think maybe kicked the teacher, ran home, and the teacher called the cops. And
the
cops,
a little kid too, not like a 18-year-old.
Yeah, like in elementary school. And the cops went to the apartment and the landlord evicted her because of that. Like, so many instances of that. And I feel like she had called like 80 or 90 different apartments and couldn't find one. And like, one of the worst parts in that book for me was, I don't know why this was it, but I can't remember their names, but I think it was the same mom with her two boys. And she was looking for a place, and she ended up staying with like this younger girl who was like in the church. Yeah. And it was like a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment or something. And there were like double-digit people living in it. And they were just talking about like the conditions and like a sink clogged or something. They were just talking about like the absolute deplorable conditions of the apartment. And I was like, no.
Well, I think the worst one was the family that had like a bunch of people were living there, and there's like roaches and rats. And another thing too is that there was one woman who was talking, the guy that doesn't have the use of his legs, who can't get on disability because he can technically still work, and you're like, he can't use his legs. Like, I feel like we should be able to help him a little. But anyway, he's like the sweetest man in this book, and he just wants so badly for his 2 sons and their friends, like, just come over here. I'd rather you guys kick it and play cards with me instead of going out and getting in trouble. And he's the sweetest. And I think his upstairs neighbor, or maybe it's downstairs, but he was asking her like, hey, like, your kids, the little girl, the toddler, was like saying that they were hungry. And he's like, oh, well, did you cook? And she's like, well, we don't have a fridge or a stove. Because a landlord, a lot of times in these situations, they don't want to have anything that can break that they would then have to pay for. So I'm like, they don't have a fridge or a stove. Like, that's.
I'm like, how is that? I'm not going to ask how is it legal, because it's not. But like the things they get away with, like renting the places that aren't up to code or saying that they'll fix it. And then there was the one, I don't know, it might have been a similar, can't remember anyone's name. She had like a baby, and they didn't have heat, I think. And her mom got involved, ended up calling like the city or the power company or whoever, and she was like, why did you get them involved? So now I have to fix it, or now I have to pay a fine. And she was like, well, think about it. If it was your child, like, would you want them like inside freezing? And so because she called and got like a government person or a city person involved, she's like, okay, well, now you're evicted. I'm like,
yeah. And there's the one where the family wasn't involved at all. Just nearby, there had been a shooting, and I think the bullets came through their window. Mm-hmm. So when the cops came in, they were like wondering if these people were involved or something, and they weren't. It was a family, and they had kids. I think it's the same family living in these awful circumstances. Or, you know, the environment was terrible, and their cops are like looking around and everything, and they've noticed the place is in terrible condition. So then they, I think, called Child Protective Services, try to get the kids taken away because the kids are living in these horrible conditions. And you're like, so now their kids are getting taken away. It's just, you know. Anyway,
it's never ending. Never.
It's a great book. So this annoyed Sean to no end, because Sean's actually the one who told me, like, you need to read this book. It's so good. And he was so frustrated because I was like, hey, so I'm looking at 1-star ratings and reviews of this book, and the one that annoyed him the most was this person saying that the book is absolutely amazing, but it was just so depressing to read about. So they gave it 1 star, and I'm like, that author lived years. He lived in the one of the areas that he's kind of taking note of is this one trailer park. So he lives in these situations for the entirety of the time he was writing, or the entirety time he was doing the observations for everything, right? So he's living in these circumstances. He's there. He's putting himself in a lot of times like kind of dangerous situations. And it's really admirable. And I can't believe the dedication he put into it. And then he makes this amazing book, which took so many years of his life, not just the research, but just like the writing of it and the statistics that he could incorporate in. And then only to have somebody be like, but it's depressing though. I'm like, you knew what you were reading. It's not like it was marketed. It's like, let's happily talk about families kicked out of houses. Like,
yeah. When he got to the end, it was saying that he had lived there and like living in like that trailer and not having hot water. I'm like, oh my God. I applaud him because I could never. But
I watched like a tiny bit of him speaking, like on a video. And the comments are always great because they're always like, this guy, like people just need to get off welfare or something. And you're like, okay, read his book first, please.
Seriously.
There's a lot of, anyway, but he seems like the nicest man. He seems so nice. Like he's going to speak and there's apparently like some chairs open and he's like, here, we're fixing problems already. Come sit over here. Like he's so cute. I don't know. He seems like such an adorable, nice man. But anyway, so that was a depressing book. The Maidens, which actually is kind of depressing too, but in a different way. I enjoyed it. We talked a little bit that I called it, and I was really proud of myself for calling it. But I don't read thrillers very often, so I was unsure as to whether it would be enjoyable for other people if they're calling it, because it seems like I was looking at the reviews because they're kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. The people that didn't like it were like, I didn't like any of the characters and I figured it out. It was really easy. And the people who liked it are like, so many twists and turns. I never knew who it was. So I'm like, that's why I could never write a thriller, because I'm like, because somebody's going to figure it out and then they're not going to like, because you got to find a happy in between where they could figure it out, but it's not too easy, you know?
Yeah, because if you do it where no one can figure it out, but even when it gets to the end and there was like nothing pointing to them, then it also is like, really, you just did that to not have people guess it. But so Mara reads a lot of like mysteries and thrillers, and so I've kind of tried to shift my mindset, because for a while I was reading so many and being like, this wasn't thrilling. Also, I feel like thrillers are never accurately marketed. I feel like some things are more like mystery, which, can I tell you the difference? Really? No, but like some books are very like page turnery, like, oh my God. And some things are more of like a slow burn, which is fine. But I think when they market certain things, but going into the Maidens, all I had heard was like, I read some of the synopsis was like talking about being set at a school and something about a murder, whatever. And so I've just started kind of changing my expectations to be like, I don't expect this to be a page turnery kind of thing. If it does, great. And so I started having suspicions towards the end, but I didn't call it as early as you did. I was like, wait, is it? I'm like, when going back and forth, but even sometimes when I can guess, I've tried to enjoy the journey so that it's not wholly dependent on finding out who it is at the end, because I find when I do that, then I'm usually like, oh, whatever. If it's well written. But yeah, I loved just the setting was, I know I hate when people are like, oh, the setting, but this also had a plot too. I just don't want the setting, but I don't want to say I loved any of the characters, but I still liked them, or liked, what was her name?
Mariana.
Mariana, there you go. And I had, yeah.
I thought it was fun. I mean, I picked it up because my mom, but for those, watching, I think my vlog might go up before this. I'm not sure. But anyway, we went to the Grand Canyon and we stayed in this little glamping tent thing. That kind of went wrong. But anyway, we were reading that because that's kind of her thing. She likes those thriller type or mystery type books. And so I was like, I think that she'll like this one. And she was like, okay, yeah, bring it. So when we stopped on the way home to get lunch and stuff, we were talking about our thoughts, and she had gotten further than me because she wakes up earlier, so she was reading before I woke up or whatever. And but I was not even 100 pages in, and I'm like, I think that this is the person because of this, this, and this. And she's like, oh, and she's like, I think it's this person. And I almost thought she was right, because at the end there's a moment when right before the big reveal where that person pops up, and you're like, oh, maybe my mom's right. Maybe it is that person. I still think it's this person. And then I was like, I got it. So when I texted her, I was like, I just finished. I called it. She's like, you did call it. So I still thought it was fun. I mean, it's weird because I think I almost sometimes I'll be curious your thoughts on this. When you read so much of a certain genre, the tropes, and the general, your expectations, what you're getting into, and you can kind of figure out just by a synopsis what is probably not going to happen, but the feeling of the book. And but when you go into a genre you don't typically read, it's so much more rooted in how did this make you feel? Did you have a good time? Yeah. And I almost feel like sometimes it's more exciting. That's not the right way to put it. But it's nice to see, that's what's great about BookTube, right? It's nice to see people who don't typically read something, what they think, versus the people who do, which is why that was a whole conversation, right? Within the romance community, why is it that the people who dip their toes in romance seem to get so many more views or attention than the people who actually read romance? But that same kind of concept, I think it's fun to see. The difference with romance, though, is people like to stick their noses up at it and act like it's lesser or something to make fun of. And it's like, I read books about make-believe and dragons. I don't know.
I don't know why. And I mean, actually, misogyny. But I definitely used to have a little back years ago when I assumed all romance, and they used to more often than not have a naked man on the cover. And I was like, I don't want to read Fabio. I don't want to read that in public. Whatever, past that. I do love the new contemporary romance covers. I know some people don't really love the illustrated covers, but I do really love them. But it's the top grossing genre, always. It makes so much money, and people are like, oh, romance. But with, I enjoyed the Maidens, and I don't know, I go through phases where I read more mystery thriller books and then not. And so that one was really good. Because did you read The Silent Patient?
No, I want to. I know you didn't like it as much. And it seems like people either like The Silent Patient more or The Maidens.
I know.
Nobody that seems to be like, I really enjoyed both.
Yeah.
But, he shouts out a character from The Silent Patient.
Yes. I was listening or reading it, and I was like, wait, that sounds familiar. But yeah, when Silent Patient came out, everybody was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was reading it and I was like, that was one that I don't know. I just didn't love that one, but I really liked this one. So
I'll be excited to go back. I probably won't be very picky because I'll just be like, that was fun. And of course, too, I think part of it for me is that when I pick up these other books, it usually has some kind of association with my mom. So like Harlan Coben, she really likes reading Harlan Coben, right? And so I picked up a Harlan Coben book for her birthday, and I feel like it's fun to get to talk to her. And she'll tell me like, oh, I didn't really like these ones. Pick up these ones or whatever, right? So I'll pick up the ones she likes, and I know she likes it. And so I think there's like that little connection. And they're very readable. That sounds stupid, but like they're very easy to get into, you know, and it's like just a nice weekend read or Friday night. And then same with the Maidens. I read it with my mom, so we were kind of buddy reading it. So I think a lot of times too, there's that, like, you know how sometimes you have to figure out if you go to the movies with a friend and like you and all your friends, it's such a good time. You're like, did I like the movie that much, or did I like the experience of seeing it with my friends? They were all laughing or whatever. And I think that happens on BookTube also, because sometimes I'm like, do all these people really like this, or do all these people really hate this, or is it just that like everybody does? And I'm not saying anybody's being dishonest necessarily, but I also think that it can be not even just other booktubers
in the moment, like, you know, especially if you read something when it just came out and everyone's reading it together, talking about it. Because I've done, you know, read a book and like, back when I could get books right on release day. I don't remember those days, and like read it and finished it. And then like a couple months later, I'm like, was it the 5 star? Or even maybe a couple weeks later, was that really 5 stars? Or was I just—
There's a weird, like, I'm not trying to say that I can't have an opinion unless I see other people's opinions, but I think we may have touched on this before, but new releases are so interesting because you're especially like, I don't know, at least with reviews, you know, a lot of times if I'm reviewing something that I've seen other people talk about, or it seems like it's pretty well known or something along those lines, I have a general idea of what people don't like about it or what they do, and then I can address that as well in the review. But when it's totally new and it's like all your thoughts, you're like, oh shoot, I can't even, because it's just helpful to know, because you can only ever have your own experience, but you can listen to other people's. But when you can't even have that because no one else is talking about it, then you're like, I think that you guys will like it. I felt that way recently about I read The Wolf of Orinyaru, which is right there, and I liked it. I quite liked it, and I've recorded a review. I need to edit it and everything, but I'm like, I think lots of people, there's potential for people to like this. But I don't know too many people that have read it. Like Patrick, of course, reads everything, so he's read it. But like the rating's kind of low, and I think the rating is too low, personally. But when I read Ninth Rain too, I'm like, I'm digging this. Will anyone else? Because sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm just like going in so many directions. But
I haven't heard of that one.
On the topic of people being influenced, I think there is this, whether it's an accident or maybe a little bit purposeful, all these books that appear on these best of lists, they're almost always the same exact fantasy books on all these lists. You can name them off the top of your head. You can probably guess like 10 out of 20, just like really quick naming them off. But sometimes I'm like, okay, well, is it that they're really that amazing, or is it that they sort of were trendsetters, or they're so popular that it's just kind of like, yeah, they're good. Like it's just assumed because so many people have read it kind of thing. But then there's that extra layer of, well, to be taken seriously, are you supposed to think these are good? What if you don't think they're good? Because I'm always like, dude, I don't think a lot of these, like, I don't personally like a lot of these. So do I just have unpopular opinions?
Stop being controversial, Elle. How dare you?
I started The Martian, and I DNF'd it. I don't know if you read and enjoyed that book.
Smart. No. I watched the movie first, and then I was like, oh my God, I love the movie. I'm going to read the book. And I didn't love the book. It was too much science in the book for me, and I was just like getting bogged down by him talking about it. So I didn't like the book.
There were other things, but all I can say is like I went to see like, what do other people like? I didn't hate it. You know, I wasn't hating it, but I was like, I'm not going to like, I'm not going to like this. I just knew. So I looked into it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like a really high rating, a lot of ratings. Of course, the movie, you know, contributed, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. Some things reach a certain level of popularity, and you know, something like, I'm sure, you know what? Before I say this, I would guess 50 Shades of Grey has a not great rating, which I'm not saying they're comparable, right? I'm not saying they're the same, but because of like society just instantly kind of is like that stuff is like such garbage. But then the Martian has a lot of truly a lot of, I think, pretty accurate science with a couple of things that you're like, you're going to have to suspend disbelief for some of this. But either way, I think because it has that more intellectual aspect, then we just assume, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but okay, 3.66 for 50 Shades of Grey. I was right. I knew it would have a lower one. And again, I'm not saying that like they're the same, but I just mean
read by a lot of people. But everyone, I feel like everyone on BookTube loves The Martian. Like loves it.
I know. I didn't. Well, I don't know. I guess for me, it's like if I'm going to read about a survival story, I want to feel like what makes survival stories really amazing for me is that feeling of like, could I do this too? Or like, if I was in the situation, what would I do? And, you know, certain really extreme things that people in survival situations have to do, you're like, man, I would have just died. I would have just been like, you know what? I'm just going to go like jump off a cliff because that sounds whatever, right? Like you got to cut open a bear and sleep inside it. Or something where you're like, oh, gross. Okay, I guess I would be dead. I wouldn't. So that kind of stuff where you can imagine yourself in it or you can't imagine yourself in it, but you like, it's so empowering almost to see this other person, this fictional person, or if it's based off a real story, to see this person overcome their circumstances. But in this situation, like nobody's ever been stranded on Mars. So, you know what I mean? Like, and there was one line in particular where they're talking about these people that are currently in space, like on some kind of, you know, they're in space, they're not on a planet. And he's stranded on a planet. And this person who's on Earth that's like managing both the rescue or at least like trying to contact him or whatever, and he's in communication with these people that are currently in space. It's like, well, those people are currently in space, so they're statistically in more danger than he is. And I'm like, what statistic? Nobody's even stranded on Mars. Like, where are you basing this from? Like, I was like, what? And like, that's a dumb thing, but I'm like, no, though. Like, I mean, we're not talking about like, oh, well, is it more dangerous to be in your car or in an airplane? Like, that's not, because there's statistics where you're like, there's actually more car crashes or whatever. This is like, nobody's ever been stranded on Mars. And then plus the main guy to me, I'm like, do you ever feel things? Like, are you ever depressed or questioning? And because the hopefulness is admirable when it's like opposing that other feeling that, you know, you could just give up. But he's like, I just got to do this. By the way, I'm watching all of these 70s garbage shows. And then he'll be like, haha, here's a kind of immature joke. Like at one point when he's communicating with people, he's like, here's a pair of a lady's chest. And he does like the parentheses and a period. And I'm like, it was a while ago.
But I finished it, but I was like, I would just rather watch the movie with Matt Damon. But on the subject of books that are on those lists, I would like to add Robin Hobb, or at least the Farseer trilogy. I don't know why I'm still reading this trilogy, because I already bought it. But I'm just so frustrated because I've just heard for years how amazing these books are. I can't speak for the rest of the books. Only I'm on Assassin's Quest. So the end of the first trilogy. And her writing is incredible. I give her writing a 5. Her characters, a 3. Her plot, a 2. You're just so long. And Robin, why? So always like, I want a woman to be up there. And her writing is incredible. But like, these books are way too long, and my God, is Fitz such an annoying character to me. But you know, like Leanna would beg to differ.
Well, I feel like on paper it's everything that I would like. It's kind of a mopey story, and you feel bad because like Fitz is always depressed, and there's kind of animal companion aspects to it. It's a lot of like being helpless, but trying to figure out a way to live within this situation where you have no agent. Your agency has been robbed of you, essentially. It's not that you have none because you have no motivation. Like all of these things that on paper, I'm like, oh, perfect. I'll like this. But I read that first one. And for me, I do think her writing is really good, but I think that her storytelling is not the kind of storytelling I like. The way that she tells the story, I feel like, and I'm not even a person who likes a lot of action necessarily, but the parts that I would want to read about, I feel like they get kind of a montage, sort of, at least in the first one, because it's the only one I've read. And I'm like, I still need to read the second, but I'm always like putting it off. But yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, there will be a whole part where I'm like, what the heck? That sounded interesting. Why did we just gloss over that? So I think it's her storytelling, isn't it? But yeah, I did a video a while back about the fact that on these best of lists, you mostly find, you know, like let's say it's top 25. I took 2 different top 25 lists that were among the first ones to pop up. And on both of them, I think out of the 25, there are only 5 women. And they were the exact same, except for I think there was one different on the lists. But I think all but one, which was Susanna Clark, all the rest of them had abbreviations or male-leaning pseudonyms, like Robin. A lot of people used to not realize Robin Hobb was a woman. Yeah. And that's not her real name, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think Robin is a pseudonym. But the rest are like their initials. So it's kind of like, I was just kind of stating this information, and the amount of people that are like, that were like, women just like don't work as hard as men. That was a comment I got, like, women just like in all fields of work don't work as hard. And then there were a lot of comments about like, well, you know, like if you look that on average, like intelligence tests, women on average are more intelligent and men are more like outliers. Like they're either really dumb or really smart. And so, and I'm not insulting any of our male authors here, right? I'm sure a lot of them are incredibly smart. But I'm like, you know, I'm sure that Brent Weeks and I'm sure Jim Butcher are real smart guys. But like, are you saying that these men are just so far above in intelligence? Then, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're probably really smart. But,
yeah,
you know, I'm like, I don't think it's that. Because also, that goes completely out the window. If let's say that's true, right? Let's say it's true that the men are just like way smarter when it comes to writing stories, which, by the way, I think women tend to score higher when it comes to aspects of writing, but whatever. But if let's say all that's true, that doesn't work then when you start incorporating the lack of a certain, let's say like a black man. How come black men are not more common in fantasy books? Is it suddenly that like your race also doesn't help
I would love them to elaborate.
I mean, I think what happened was like one person commented that, and then so other people saw that and they're like, yeah, and then they just started commenting that too. And one person had a comment, I'm like, this one makes sense, and I think that this is a worthy thing to dissect, which is that because for a long time, I mean, whatever about your thoughts of modern society, but it would be weird to deny that like women didn't have as many rights as men for a while, and it wasn't that long ago, and like women couldn't even vote for a long time, and even when they could, it's not like everything magically got better, and so certain career options weren't available to them. So the people who were writing fantasy and getting published and getting popular were just bound to be men at that time, and a lot of these best of lists are looking at, like I talked about before, these like trendsetters or these ones that have been recognized for a long time as like the greats. So, you know, obviously Tolkien or something like that. So I'm like, that's really worth pointing out. And I think a thing is like, there's this weird, the thing back in my day was good. So we don't see as many modern works getting onto these lists, except for, you know, like Sanderson, I would say. But yeah. I think that's a great point, that a lot of these works are typically slightly older fantasy, and it was just men were writing more often at that time. You know, I'm like, okay, that's a great point. But the point about like, well, men just like, even though women on average are like more intelligent, I'm like, I don't think that works.
These men are just so smart that that's why on these lists. Yes. I'm looking at, you've read The Wheel of Time? This just made me think of The Wheel of Time. Four of them. I have the first 2, and I've been meaning to read them, and I just don't think I'll like them. But I'm like, I just should give the first book a chance. I have it on my shelf, but it's 600. It's so long.
I am excited for you to read them. I always hope people enjoy I feel like, of course, selfishly, that's why people like rant reviews, because they like when somebody feels the same, or they just enjoy seeing people get worked up, right? And that's fine. But selfishly, I'm like, join my side. but you know, the non-selfish, I want people to enjoy it. I obviously want you to enjoy it, and I want Jade really likes it. You should talk to Jade about it.
Well, I almost like, this is so silly, but I almost hope I don't like it because there's so many dang on books in the series. I'm like 14. Is 14, right?
Yeah, and then there's a prequel also.
That's
I know, it's a lot.
We'll see.
Questions about clothes and stuff too. Which I gotta say, it's really funny to me. I feel like if we were talking about the Cruel Prince series, and it's like, oh, we have to describe all their dresses, or like A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like, I don't care about the like dining room table, but then Robert Jordan, it's like he's just so detailed and like the world is so well fleshed out, and I'm like, excuse me.
Everything. I like detail up to a certain point, but like sometimes it becomes too much. That's why I really struggled in the Fellowship of the Ring with Tolkien. I was like, because I just visualize everything, and so it slows me down when it's like super detailed because my mind is piecing it together.
So Jade has brought up an interesting point before, and she's a fan of Wheel Time. I'm like, this is why I feel like there's no such thing as an objectively good or bad book. So she's brought up that she doesn't visualize things basically at all. I forget what it's called. She's actually said she wished she could do a video about it. But she's a little busy growing a human right now. But she's talked about before, like there's something about how much certain people visualize. Mm-hmm. So people who visualize a lot, so I visualize a lot, and it sounds like you do too. It seems like we don't like excessive description because at some point it feels excessive. We're like, I get it. I get it. Whereas other people, it helps them because they don't visualize. So it's like the information is important to help put them in that setting. Mm-hmm. And kind of ground them the way that the characters are supposed to be grounded in that setting. And I think that's really fascinating because that, I think, plays a role so much into how much description you like. Mm-hmm. If you visualize everything, like some people can see it, whatever. Mm-hmm. I think that it makes perfect sense. I definitely am the kind of person that I don't like excessive by my standards. And then also I have to sometimes in my mind ask, okay, is this relevant though? Because I'm a character-driven reader, I don't care about certain details if they don't somehow come back to the character. Mm-hmm. So even if it's third person, if a character is known for, like, let's say they are like they're like highly trained fighters, or what, like when they walk into a room, it would make sense that they're like looking around their surroundings, like what could be used as a weapon, or like getting an idea of like what's the vibe in the room and whatever, that would make sense. But if you have a character who's just like cutesy, I'm hungry, and they walk into a tavern and they're like, it smells good, like it would make sense for that character to think about different things. Mm-hmm. But what can happen is if you write even in third person, this sort of each character is going to notice different things, or the setting is going to be reliant on how the character is as far as how much description you get. Some people view that as, oh, I just feel like I never got the description I wanted. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, but with that person. So it's all, I think, dependent on the kind of reader you are too.
Yeah. When the live we did with Bethany on Thursday, it was brought up, the term of the people who visualize and the people who don't was brought up there, and I cannot remember. But we were talking about that because I was saying, because I am super visual, and so once you're already describing it, I'm walking through the story, I'm seeing everything. You describe a character, I see a character. That's why I often struggle with adaptations, because I'm like, no, the book has put it in my mind, and here I have how this person should look, and then I see it and I'm like, unacceptable. But it's really interesting. For the longest time, I thought everybody did that. Like, I thought everyone had an internal voice. Everyone visualized everything. And then, like, I forgot who it was who tweeted about, like, not having, like, an internal monologue or not here. I'm like, what do you mean? It's super fascinating. So if anybody, or if Jade, after Making Human, has time to make a video like that, I would love to see that.
Because she said, I know she said somebody did make a video, but I don't remember what, I don't remember what this is called. So I feel bad that I can't shout out, because there have been people who I think have made videos and how it relates to reading. Anyway, I think it's super fascinating. I am down to chat a little more if you are. It's almost an hour.
Yes.
We can hit, let's see. Oh my gosh, sorry. I just realized, because I still had it up on 50 Shades of Grey. There's over 2 million ratings. At first I'm like, am I misreading this?
So much money. So much money.
Anyway.
I had the first one. I won't.
Oh, you did?
And I DNF'd the second one because I was like, I cannot.
My mom is so cute, because she was like, I'll give him a try. And then she was like, he's actually had like a really dark upbringing. Trying to find like the story within. I'm like, you're cute, Mom. I think most people read it for the dirty stuff, but I mean, she probably was like entertained by that stuff too. So there's a few different things we can bring up, and of course we can bring these up in future ones, but I think this one would be really interesting to hear your perspective on. It says, have you noticed people treating you differently as your channels have grown?
Yes. Have you? Or do you just want me to?
I'll let you go first. I feel like I have a tendency to talk too much. At some point, I might go grab another beverage while you're talking, so I'm not like, you know what? You've got a lot of subscribers now, so like I don't even need to be here. Or this. Anyway,
Bye.
But I'm going to grab it now. You can start talking. I'll still hear you.
Okay. I feel like yes, in certain aspects. I feel like some names that I keep seeing pop up in my comments, and I'm like, yay, still treat me the same. But then there are some people who I've had comments more recent, I've told you about them, that I feel like as my channel has grown, and of course I keep doing like the book community where things that usually happen are calling out certain things like, racism or I can't think of the word, or just like harmful behavior and stuff like that. And, diversity, all these important things. And so then if I'm not always spot on to how I guess some people have thought that my brand is, like I had a comment on the video like, I'm so disappointed this is like all popular white authors in this video. And I thought about that. I thought about it before I put the video up, but I'm like, I wanted to talk about this trope, and these are the books that I have read. I would like to read more, make another video later in. And so comments like that, like, I'm disappointed in you. It doesn't seem like your brand, like you would do this. So I don't feel like it's been as much, but there has been kind of like those kind of comments or I get emails about like I use the wrong kind of language in a video, like, oh, this was ableist language, or not like I'm trying to be, and I'm not trying to talk down to those people, but I do get like feedback like that. Like I feel almost like I have to be like this perfect booktuber, and I'm never going to be because I'm a human. But I do think as it's grown, obviously that means more people, and so more people's opinions. And so not a lot, but a little bit. Definitely, I feel like there's some people who may hold me to a higher standard, and I'm like, but I'm still.
Well, we've also talked before too that, I mean, I'm pretty pasty white, right? And like, you can be white, and because I'm half Cuban, I'm also part Native American, but I mean, when you look at me, I'm a white person, right? So I still think though that there's like, I think it's almost extra difficult because here you are as somebody with certain experiences because you're not pasty white. And on top of that, you also are expected to then be better because you've had these experiences where maybe somebody has been racist towards you or mistreated you because you're a woman or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, you understand. So then like you should be perfect in every way. And it's like, there are some people that like we don't ever hold the same standards to. Yeah. We also haven't faced these sorts of things. So yes, to put it bluntly, it's almost like you're a Black woman, so you should you should know. Like, you
Yeah.
should know, and you should get this stuff.
How dare I?
And I think there's a big difference. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think there's a big difference between somebody, hold on. Can you hear the air conditioning that just came on?
No.
Okay, good. Because it's like really loud, but I think in this setting it doesn't pick it up as much. But I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think that there's a big difference between somebody making an effort to let you know, like, hey, just so you know, like, sometimes this is kind of not a certain word. I think this is especially true of people from different countries, because what's considered rude in one place might not be considered rude in another. And so letting people know, since, you know, the internet is a worldwide thing. A big difference, though, in letting someone know versus just deciding, well, you're a terrible person because you didn't know, right? And I also think there's a difference between when you, I don't like talking numbers, but when your channels get bigger, obviously you have more eyes on you. And so I think that there's a difference between understanding your quote unquote influence and trying to be aware and conscientious. Is that the right way to put it? Like, just trying to make sure that you're mindful. That's what I'm trying to say. You're mindful of people's feelings. You're mindful of the way you articulate certain things. You don't want to come across a certain way. And like you said, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. But there's a difference between deciding, like, well, who cares? I should be treated exactly the same. And it's, okay, well, maybe you could have slipped up when you had 50 subscribers, that slip up is obviously going to be highlighted a little more when you have 50,000 or 500,000 or whatever it is. And so I do think that when you have a bigger following, you have to try to be more and more aware, because you're literally talking to more people with more experiences, and just be willing to listen to what people have to say. But at the same time, the expectation for somebody to already be perfect once they get there, I think, can be a little unreasonable sometimes. Or the way that we love to talk about mental health until somebody does something that even slightly annoyed us. And then it's like, well, I'm just going to talk a lot of trash about them now. And you're like,
yes.
Have you had people talk trash about you? It's not a great feeling. And now I think it's like, there's so many aspects of this. We could make a whole video about it, but it's different if, like, if I threw around some kind of slur, you can talk trash about me. But I mean, like, here's an example of something I try to avoid, but I'm going to slip up on. Like, the term binge, like, oh, I binge read this whole book. For some people with eating disorders, the word binge is like kind of something uncomfortable. And I think it's important to be honest. The first time I ever heard that, I was like, what? Same. And, you know, and then it's like, how hard would it be to just say marathon, you know? Like, and I get, some people are like, oh, at some point we're never going to be able to say anything or what. I'm like, no, be realistic. That's not what it is. And I don't know, maybe someday marathoning runners will be like, excuse me, it's not the same. Like, not trying to make fun of, I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm just like, you know, you don't know what, like, and my mom, I feel like, is a great example of, there was a period of time where people would say the R word, right? Like, casually, like, oh, that's so stupid. But they would say that word. And when you're young and you're on social media more, I think you become more aware of what typically, like, might hurt someone's feelings, and so you try to avoid it. But someone like my mom's generation, where they're not on social media, they're not tapped into that as much, every now and then she'll do that, where she'll be like, oh, so stupid, but she'll use that word, and I'm like, Mom, and she's like, sorry, you know, like, and because it's like, eventually we'll get to a point where that word, like, everybody will be like, no, like, you probably shouldn't say that, you know. But there's also, like, a weird transition period. I don't know, social media is interesting because we're still at a point where there's a lot of human beings in first world countries who don't really use social media. So they don't necessarily know what's considered problematic or harmful or hurtful. But I guess, sorry, that's going into a whole other topic. Anyway, to get back to the question.
It's on topic, because that is just even like, I feel like when I was in, like, middle school and high school, if something was, like, dumb or something, he would be like, oh, it's gay. That was like a thing people said. And so, yeah, things change. And same with the way binge. I've been trying not to say that. And then also, like, when I first started out my channel, I would say things like, this was insane and crazy. And someone pointed out, like, the mental disorder.
I say that all the time.
And it's hard because I've said that my entire life. And so then recently, something else has been pointed out where I'm like struggling with it. So it's just like, and I don't say the next thing to like sound cocky, but like my trajectory has been really fast. So it's been like, I haven't had time to like slowly gains. It just happened. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like I went from this little bit to this. I mean, to me, that's a lot. I'm at like 22, but it happened so quickly. And so I'm still like, oh yeah, there's a lot of people and trying. And so I always am like trying to be aware, trying to be mindful. Like videos, I have to edit so much out because I'm like, I'll say something, I'm like, oh no, better word for that.
I mean,
we're not gonna say that word.
The biggest one I encountered, and we don't have to go into, super detail about this because it gets into like my personal experiences growing up as a child, but when there's a part in the Store My Archive where like this woman who sort of married, she had like these two brothers interested in her, and she married the one that was going to be more politically powerful. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. And that's the one, like, it's in the past, like this is thing that's already happened, but you get a flashback at one point and you see their relationship wasn't great. And he is basically throwing in her face, like, I know you just married me for my power. And I kind of jokingly was like, I mean, she kind of did though. Like, she kind of deserved that. Like, she's kind of a gold digger. And people were, I'm not trying to laugh and mock this because I'm like, the way I said it, I'm like, I get why it came across that way, but almost like I thought she deserved to be abused. And I was like, when I listened back, I was like, oh man, like that. I mean, the way I said it out of context, not even in context, whatever. Like that's kind of how it comes across. But I'm like, that's not. I more meant like she did though, like kind of marry the one that was more, what I mean. But I was like, and it was especially weird as somebody who's experienced, like in my childhood, living with a very, very angry man who you're afraid of, like, and you like literally wonder, like, I hope they don't get really mad and kill my mom tonight. Like when you have that situation in your household and then you have people saying like you're being insensitive toward that. And you're like, oh, I would never mean to be insensitive toward somebody facing something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's an example of like you're saying, you have to go back and really think like, oh shoot, that didn't come out the way I meant. And as much as it bothers me, it's currently a fact that the internet is not one for nuance or like, especially on Twitter. Yeah. And there's like no nuance. It's where nuance goes to die. Because it's just like sound bites, it's like
here's my graveyard. Yeah, my video for tomorrow kind of touches on that a little bit, but it is really like, even I don't know everybody. And some people I feel like may either see something and just completely take it out of context and really think that the person, I think a lot of people have this idea that more people have like a bad intention than instead of giving them the benefit of the doubt. And so we'll then tweet about something. And then there's other people I wonder if like they know people really didn't mean harm by it, like, but they want to point it out anyway to get other people riled up. Like, I feel like that's a genuine part of Twitter, just Twitter overall. Yeah. And then so it's so easy and it gets traction when one person's like, oh my gosh. And then it flows and everyone wants to like jump on. And so I try myself to like not, unless it's like on like a politician because they all suck. But like when it's something else, like an author or something, I mean, I'm reading them and I'm bookmarking the tweet, but I try not to, jump on like retweeting or quote tweeting those things because I'm like, wait, oh yeah, a lot of people don't like, just like that Sarah Dessen thing, like reading a clip and it's like, well, where's the full thing? Or where's context, nuance? Yeah, not on Twitter. I mean, I still love Twitter, but it does not exist there. It's like, I take this one line and I'm going to run with it.
And I think an aspect too is like some people just aren't on social media very, like I don't go on Twitter very much. I kind of just don't like, it's very cluttered to me. And I don't know. It's weird
Are you on
because
TikTok?
no.
I'm not me either.
I like being able, we've talked about this before. I like being able to be behind the scenes, creating something, or I've mentioned to you, but I'll add here for those that don't know, I used to teach private violin lessons, and I really liked when my students, I would host a recital for them where they'd get to play. And I like being in the background knowing like I helped them get to this point where they get to shine. And so as somebody who makes videos, like I like being able to make videos and hopefully, I don't know, like you get more insight on a book, or maybe this is entertaining, or Luna's really cute and it made your day better, whatever. Like I like being able to do that. But then the like talking to people part, even though almost most of the people who are subscribed, or at least, you know, take the time to comment, are so nice. And a lot of them are really funny and they're really generous and they're so lovely. But there are some days where I'm like, I just can't today. I'm already pretty antisocial. I don't know how to like have a lot of friends all at once. I can have a couple and I'm like, for like this amount of weeks, I'm really talkative with these couple of people. And then I'm like, shoot, my other friends are going to think like I'm mad or something. And so anyway, I had something else to add to the like people treating you differently as your channels grow. I did a video about like celebrity culture on BookTube. I don't like, and I want so much so for like, for example, the author-reader interactions conversation. I feel like I have some thoughts about that. But I also have a lot of people on BookTube who I like, who are on different sides of that conversation. And I wouldn't want to add to the conversation only to have... I always feel bad because I never want people to think I'm implying that people who watch are just sheep and they'll just follow whatever you say. But I wouldn't want people to watch and then my channel, if it's bigger than other people's, that means like more people have the likelihood of seeing what I said. And then that's like the primary exposure they have to that topic. And then therefore there's more people aligning with my side. So in my head, I'm like, I have to consider, okay, I want people to be able to voice their opinions on this and not talk over them necessarily, even if I do think I have things to add. So even though I want to do a lot of conversation videos, one, I don't ever like reacting quickly to these sorts of conversations. Like I'll react to the Times 100 list because that's not a person, or it doesn't really, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a little different, but something that involves other people, because it can be kind of uncomfortable if you're making a video basically kind of sort of being like, I disagree with this group of people that I consider to be kind of my friends. And I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable the way that sometimes we value certain people's opinions more because their channels are bigger. Or we think people are saying something new when they're not. Somebody will make a video saying literally nothing new. They're just basically... all that's changed is that they're the ones saying it now. And then people will be like, this is why I love you.
Oh, never heard this before. And it's like,
and then you're like, everybody's already saying this.
You're
like, also, I gotta say, just as around the time that like some of that was happening, specifically with Malazan, I had a video coming out talking about like interviewing authors and like my personal feeling about, because in the past I didn't ever want to. And anyway, this video was going to be made at the time it was made because I was having a interview with Rosaria Munda coming up. And so I wanted to have kind of my thoughts out there about specifically tied to me and whatever. But it was right when all the Malazan stuff was happening. And obviously being a fantasy reader and interacting with people in like the fantasy community, I just knew like people were going to think that that's what I was talking about. So I posted on, I think every like community tab, Twitter, Instagram, like this has nothing to do with Malazan, just so everybody knows. And then my friend told me that somebody in their Discord was like, oh good, now we get to see what she has to say. And then like somebody replied like, dude, did you even watch? Because at the beginning of the video, I'm like, this has nothing to do with Malazan, if that's what you're thinking. And so I even say it in the video. And somebody they just saw the thumbnail and they're like, oh, great. Like, and I'm like, well, I'm glad that my opinion would have been welcome.
That's people who like, before we watch the video, if you set up a video to premiere, just go off and they're like, dislike. And you're like, you haven't even seen it. You haven't even watched the video.
Like, that's kind of, in a weird way, I'm not saying this is only on Twitter. It's all over the place. But it's that same thing of like, you get a glimpse of something. You get a peek at something. And you're like, I have all the opinions already. And you're like, what? Off of this little... okay. So...
Interwebs, there's good and there's bad, sadly. But, yes.
So I guess the mindfulness again. And what I don't like, on top of, I don't want people to give me more credits. I also wish that people who had bigger channels, I mean, I feel bad being like, why can't you be more like me? But that's not what I mean necessarily. But I also wish people would consider more that aspect of like, I don't want to be toppling everybody's opinions on this. Because you do, if you have 10 people whose channels are roughly 1,000 or whatever, right? And they're having a conversation about something. And then you have, I'm just going to throw out a big number. If you have like 500,000, then you say something, there's a pretty big chance that everybody in the smaller channel range, they're not even going to be seen or heard. So yeah, I don't know. I wish, and that's, I guess, a weird, how I treat people different. It's almost like how I treat myself, I guess. But what I also don't like is when people just automatically, if I'm having a private conversation with someone or I'm messaging in like a more private space, maybe it's a group chat or something. And then I find out that someone thinks like, well, but like she's got a huge channel. And it's like, that's not relevant in this small setting though. Like this isn't, I didn't say anything on my channel. I'm just talking right now. So I don't like when people see me and they immediately associate, they just see your numbers. That I don't like. And I have to, I don't know. I get frustrated at that.
Almost at 100K. You're a superstar.
I'll add too that I have noticed that when last year my channel was like pretty, almost, I feel bad saying stagnant, but when it wasn't growing as much due to my chaotic situation at home and sad situation, and I just didn't know when I could post or what I was going to post or whatever, like it was interesting to see the way I got passed over. Like, oh, well, she's not really growing right now. So, and that aspect, I'm like, well, that highlights some things for me. So.
But you're growing now. Can't wait for your silver play button. I know you don't like to mention numbers, but it's gonna happen.
Jade, I told Jade, I was like, do you want mine? Because I don't even care. And she's like, come on, you should care. And I was like, you
can clear out some of those books and put it on display right behind you. See it in all your videos. I mean, like, I have a friend who's 100K. Shimmy.
I don't know if you saw everybody, but like, I'm officially important.
All your videos just start in Zoom. Do you ever watch Books with Emily Fox?
Here and
she
there.
Has a little like, is it a snow globe with like the picture of like her on it, but it's like the other Emily or whatever she refers to? I can't remember what it is, but it's like, she calls it like the other Emily, and then her camera will like focus on it. You with your play button, just like Zoom.
I don't know anything. I by no means think that if somebody has it displayed or anything, that they should be ashamed of themselves or whatever. Because I have a thing about, well, that actually tied into another, a person asked like, how do we feel about imposter syndrome, and specifically, or in addition to the fact that we're ladies, if there's any imposter syndrome associated with being women. But anyway, just I have a hard time like not accepting praise necessarily, but just I always feel like I don't deserve anything.
So accepting praise, accepting compliments. I mean, accepting praise or compliments, or same. I'm never, even outside of BookTube, just anything. If someone's like, "Oh my god, I like your sweater," I'm like, just something like, "I'm not good." I'm like, it's terrible. Don't say that. Stop lying. Imposter syndrome is real.
I think I don't feel imposter syndrome on BookTube because I'm literally just telling you, like, here are my thoughts. So it's not really like,
yeah.
It's not, this isn't an area of expertise. I would feel imposter syndrome if I didn't actually read the books and people were watching my videos for my book reviews, then I might feel imposter syndrome. But, I read the books. So, or like if you get all your opinions from what other people have to say, or if you're, anyway,
Yeah.
I would feel imposter syndrome that way. But no, I always felt imposter syndrome, excuse me, when I was going to school for music. I mean, and to be fair, like everybody, this is not my imposter syndrome talking, I promise. But like most people were better than me. I have no problem admitting that, especially because I was a music ed major and where I went to school. If you were a music ed major, it was almost like a double major because it was music and education, where the performance majors, it was like, get really good at your instrument, practice all the time. So it was expected for them to be better. And I was only one of a few that were music ed. Like I had classes in college that had like 10 people in them. It was because it's such a specific degree. But that amplified, like, I don't deserve to be here, like surrounded by these people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're playing the Tchaikovsky violin concerto and I'll never learn that. Like that kind of a feeling, But I've experienced imposter syndrome in a lot of things. I think for me, it's the like deserving of, like recognition, or like I deserve, I don't know, any success. I'm always like, I'm just derpy me. I don't know why I deserve any of it. But as far as like, as being a woman, and if it relates at all to imposter syndrome on the internet, I don't feel imposter syndrome for anything in being a lady. Like I don't, but I do think maybe this is what they meant by this. I'm not sure, but I have had people treat me poorly because I'm a girl talking about fantasy, Mm-hmm. I've been, not that I talk about it all the time, but I started my channel a lot talking about Witcher. So I'm a huge Witcher fan. And that fandom is pretty disgusting. And they would say disgusting things to me, or they would say just kind of degrading things to me. I was faking being a fan. That's the light stuff. I mean, I would get really gross comments. And that, for me, it's like, I don't feel like me being a female has anything to do with my enjoyment, but they do. Like they have thoughts about me liking it. And so that's frustrating. And it's frustrating to see that I had been talking about it for a really long time. And then somebody who's a guy can talk about it. And then everybody gives them the respect. Everybody just like actually talks about Witcher with them. Yeah. Or everybody thinks that what they have to say is more insightful, when it's like, sometimes those people were coming to me, and asking me stuff. Sure, you can treat me like I'm just some dumb chick. So
you don't know anything. Like, actually, I know more than most. I don't think, I feel like I've definitely had imposter syndrome, like in previous jobs before, and especially as a woman. But on BookTube, I don't feel like it's directly because I'm a woman. I just feel, I think because it happens so quickly, it feels like, I don't know, I feel like people are dependent on me for, like certain things. Like when I get messages or tweets like, oh, I hope this is covered, or can you explain this or something? And so then I'm like, I'm not qualified to be doing this. Like, why are you coming to me, listening to me, or taking, like super nice comments? And I'm like, but I'm not that smart. This is just me telling you what was happening on Twitter. Or, when praise and recognition, my go-to is like, oh, stop. Because I'm just like, yeah, stop it. I'm awkward. I can't accept that. So that's where mine comes in, more around like when I do like book or videos about books or whatever, like that's just, me. It's fun. Yeah. Like you said, just talking about books, but like my like tea videos or something, or like talking about a specific topic, I get really like.
Do you think, have you checked your analytics to see how many like women versus men are subscribed to you, the percentage?
It is overwhelmingly women. I think it's like,
I was going to say
something percent.
I know when I did a video with Petrick, we were kind of comparing, and I think ours are pretty close, but in reverse. Like, I think mine's pretty even-ish. Obviously, it's not exactly 50-50, but I think it's like 60. Sorry, last time I checked, I think it's like 60-something women and 40-something men. And I think his was similar, but in reverse, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, are you looking at it right now? I'll look at it right now, too. But I think that, I mean, I have to consider how many people are going to get weird if I mention, like, oh, I didn't really like how much like the women were constantly assaulted in this book or something like that. Then I know there's going to be somebody that's like going to be weird about that. And I'm like, well, whereas I think the best way to put it is you kind of have an idea of how people are going to react based off of your analytics sometimes. And somebody with different analytics might be praised more for saying the exact same things, or might be, I guess, I don't want to say attacked, but like they'll face more negativity. Did you find it? What's yours?
Yes. Mine is 93% women.
That seems about right. That's what I was expecting.
That's a lot. That is a lot.
Let's see. Okay, yeah, mine's just over 60 for female and just under 40 for male.
Dang. Well, like, I guess because, not saying like only women like drama, but it is what it is. I never saw this part of like other videos your audience watched. This is really interesting.
Oh, I don't like looking at that.
No?
No.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. The top one was by a not bookish creator that I subscribe to named Smoky Glow. So that was just funny.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. But who is this? This person? Do you ever come across, this is kind of off topic, random people who like have book channels? And obviously we can't know everybody, right? But like who have huge booktube channels. And I've like never heard of them before. Like this person, is his name like Jack Edwards? He has like 600,000 subscribers. I've like never heard of him. But he talks about books, I think. But I don't know if he just does books. So maybe that's why. But he has 638,000 subscribers. And yeah, he talks about books all the time. And I've never heard of him before.
I think at some point, it looks like he does do a lot with books. That seems to be the primary thing. I was gonna say, I think at some point, a channel that is only about books, different with comics, but a channel that's only about books is likely going to reach a certain point and then almost plateau. And you have to start incorporating other things, which, not that you have to, but like for people, let me rephrase. The ones that tend to get really high start to incorporate other things, I've noticed. So it's not just books.
But it's weird because he has another channel that said that's supposed to be just about books. It's like 100K, but I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, I don't think he used to do books on this one. I just thought that was interesting. But that just came up on who other people subscribe to or something. But yeah, mine is 93%. Hilarious. It makes sense. It makes sense.
That's, like I said, it's about what I would expect for you.
Book community. It's all good. It's all good.
But yeah, I mean, every now and then I'll have pity party days where I'm like, if so-and-so had said this exact thing, everybody would be like praising them for it. And then other days,
how revolutionary. I would have never thought of that. And you're like,
yeah, but on the flip side, I'm sure there are people that are like, what the heck? I've said that exact same thing. But like everybody's saying like, oh yeah, this is why I love you. And then they've said it before.
This ain't new. But that's the nature of life, I guess, Credit is not always given where it's due, and some people get more shine, and you just have to deal with it.
Well, I think, how people say you know, it's not about who did it first, but it's about who did it better. And I hate that because I'm like, some people clearly just go back through to see like what popular videos has she made. I'm just going to remake that same video. And you're like, cool. Yep.
That's that works for you. Glad to be your inspo. You're welcome.
Yes. I'm glad that you look through your subscription feed for inspiration. It's like, just say you don't have any ideas, so you're just going to copy someone else's. It's one thing to take inspiration, like, you know, like you do baking and books, or like Cindy does like cook and book or something like that, book and cook, something like that. And if more people start doing videos associated with like cooking, and I'm like, okay, that's like more, it's kind of like a broader thing. It's kind of a specific video topic. One, if you want to give credit as like, oh, I saw so-and-so talk about this and like, I want to talk about it too. Or if you like just have completely different things to say. But when you're saying like word for word what another person said, it's like, okay, this is fine, I guess.
No specific examples, none, just a general statement.
It's just how the world works, though, right?
Truly, unfortunately.
I saw one of my favorite channels is Sam Collins. I don't know if you watch his channel. I love Sam Collins. But he no, he's not. But he just like reacts to stuff a lot of times. All sorts of different things. But he was reacting to this person who literally their entire TikTok, which I don't even understand how TikTok works, but this person would just do exactly the same TikToks, but they had a bigger amount of, what do you call them? Are they subscribers on TikTok? Followers. He had way more followers, and he would just copy like a bunch of people's, and people called him out on it. And he was like, you know, I'm an actor, so like I don't write my own material or something. And it's like, what? That's not. No, come on, get out of here. That's not how that works. Yeah, but that's sometimes what I'm like, is that what people must really, I would love to be in their brain, would like to hear how they justify sometimes this, because I'm like, okay, you can tell yourself you're a nice person, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying you're evil, but I don't know how you feel good about this, like, especially when
on the internet. I can just take it, just do it. Credit. Yeah.
But then if you ever bring attention to it, then you're starting drama, and you're like, all right, cool. I'll just happily I'll try to keep being creative, I guess. Or
you can have inspiration. You're welcome.
Yeah. I'll keep providing you with your video ideas, I guess, you know. Just kidding. I also just want to say, before anybody's like, I want to know what they're talking about, I feel like we're just being silly in a lot of ways. Like, that kind of stuff does happen, but it's not the main thing. Like, BookTube is filled with lovely people. Jess and I are just kind of like trollolling each other a little. But, like that kind of stuff, it's not like a BookTube specific. I mean, that kind of stuff happens everywhere, right? Like, I saw this, there's this person I follow on Instagram. Shoot, I hope I can remember their name. I never remember anybody's names on Instagram. I just like, I know their profile.
And then I'm trying to find it. And I'm like, God dang it. I wish I could just type in what their profile picture looks like.
I know. I know I sent a picture of them to somebody before, so I'm going to go back through my DMs. Okay, so this person, they do like the most interesting like makeup and hair. And when I say, I mean like fairy tale looking sometimes. Like, look at how cool that is.
Oh my gosh.
And they do all these different looks, like they did this one. And I love their stuff, but they've shared, because they do really interesting ones with like flowers in their hair or really weird poses and stuff. They have like an interesting style too for their, I don't know if they actually dress like this out and about, but for their pictures. Like, I've never wanted purple and pink and blue hair until I saw that picture and I was like, what?
Yeah, stuff like that. I'm always like, wouldn't want it in real life, but it looks so good on certain people.
She does everything. But anyway, she'll do these really intense, interesting looks, and then she'll post like, oh, always great when people don't credit you at all. It'll be the exact same pose, makeup look, hair look, and people will act like they just created it. And at least in her situation, like she's the one who has more followers. And so, you know, like it's not like they're taking a smaller, I mean, this happens all over the place, right? I've seen an artist before have really cute designs, like cute little animal looking things, and somebody will take their prints and then try to put it on products of theirs, and like that kind of stuff happens. Even on Amazon, I've heard that, you know how there's Amazon picks that if somebody is selling a product and it's doing well, Amazon will come out with their own, and then the Amazon pick will just be like theirs or something, which I would have to look into that more. So like, don't
believe it.
Fact, but I mean, I know it's the way of the world, right? I know, but I'm just like, it sucks though. Why can't people be like nicer? So I just want to say most people on BookTube, most people who watch BookTube, who make BookTube videos are like the nicest people. This is just a thing that happens all over, right? So anyway, it's not all, because I feel like people always are like, I want to know. I didn't know there was this much drama. And it's like, there's not really like that much, you know, it's not like they're secretly like hate each other or something.
No. I mean, there's drama, but most of it ends up being dumb stuff, you know, that somebody says on Twitter and somebody gets mad. Or like right now, BookTok is alight with mess. Every time I'm like, maybe I should get a TikTok really to make videos of Nigel, because I see other ones and I'm like, oh, that would be so cute with Nigel. And then I see a video and I'm like, never mind. I don't think that app is for me. And it seems complicated. People are like making mini productions on TikTok. I am old. I can't do those things.
Have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
No, but I've heard so many people tell me about it, and I need to watch it.
Extraordinarily dumb. Like it's this really stupid movie, right? But it's like there's so many aspects of it. You're like, oh my gosh, this is kind of true. And so it really hits. The first time I ever saw it, I was a kid. My mom and I randomly rented it, and then it was really funny. But I watched it again as an adult, and I'm like, I feel like we're getting closer to this. It's so extreme and dumb. But I feel like, you know, we talk about how entertainment is just getting like smaller and smaller in a lot of ways. Like it started out as Facebook, and you have these, let me rephrase. There used to be blogs. People had blogs and they wrote a lot. And it's like, that's too much to read. So then we had Facebook, which is just posts and it's more personal. Then we have Twitter, which is even shorter. Now we have BookTok, which is just like, I liked this book. And like, that's it. And you're like,
literally. They're just like, and I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know.
I want to know more about it.
It is not for me. I don't know. The TikToks that I see that are like on Twitter or Instagram that I like are usually people dancing or something else, or all those ones I keep sharing with changing outfits. Obsessed. But like the book ones I see, I never understand the allure of them. And maybe again, it's people want something quick, because it'll just be like books with bad boys, and then they just show it. And I'm like,
exactly. Yes, that's exactly.
I don't know. And there's people who prefer that short content, but I would prefer that type of video as a YouTube video, because then I can hear someone talk about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can get more than just you saying it has this and here's the cover. But it works for people, obviously. People are making money on BookTok, or they're crying about books, or they're getting books from publishers. But I just don't get it. And maybe I'm just too old. I don't know.
I think, first off, we're showing the shift in generations, right? Like we're becoming old people. We're already being like, oh, these young kids and their BookTok.
Damn it, Kinsey.
Why don't they want to hear more about it? So I think there's an interesting pushback where we're getting some content that's extremely short, like TikTok type content. And then we're seeing a lot of emphasis on long format, like podcasts or content that spans almost like episodic. Like movies aren't really a thing, right? It's all about TV shows now. And so I think it's like one or the other. It's either really short or you got to devote a lot of time to it. And so it feels like that pocket that we're used to of, you know, like 10 to 20 minutes of something like that's, you can consume it while you're taking a break or while you're getting dressed or while you're on lunch or something. That kind of content is sort of gone, not gone, but like it's not as high in demand as these quick little like, hey, I have 5 minutes, so I'm just going to scroll through. Oh, cool. Enemies to lovers. Okay, I'll save that. And then I'll go, when I go to the bookstore this weekend, I'll look at these. And I don't know. It's just, it's interesting to see. Or I think podcasts do well too because of commutes, or if you're at home, like a lot of people that work from home and things, if you're doing things around the house and you're doing a job that doesn't require a lot of concentration necessarily, it's more maybe like a physical skill or whatever it is, then you can like listen to this podcast the whole day.
Yep.
And
when I used to commute, because I didn't always listen to audiobooks, and I've only recently listened to even more, like it only used to be certain things, but I would listen to podcasts because it depended on the day. For a job, I had like a 30 minutes to an hour commute. And then I had a job where I drove like literally to houses. So it could be like 15 minutes to 3 hours to one person's house. So I would listen to podcasts or audiobooks. And I have so many things I need to listen to right now. So many podcasts that people have told me about that I'm like, downloaded an episode. I just haven't got to them. But then I'm also trying to do audiobooks, but then I also don't commute. And so I walk Nigel, but it's not that long. And, I play The Sims and listen to stuff or chores, but like commute really was a lot of my listening time. So podcasts definitely are.
I used to, very similarly, when I taught private lessons, I would teach a lot of kids at their houses. And sometimes they would live in a completely different city, basically. And so I'd have to drive really far, and same thing, or especially if I got stuck in traffic on the way home and it takes like an hour and a half to get home or something, I'd be listening. And I know there's a lot of people that commute just all the time for work, depending on if you live in a certain area, but you work in the city, whatever it may be. But I try, it's almost like purposeful audiobook listening where I'm like, you know what, I'll just do my laundry and I'll do like the dishes or whatever, something that requires no brain power so that you can listen to an audiobook at the same time. Because I don't know if you ever feel this way. There's something about, I know you have a similar streak in you. I don't know if you feel this about this particular thing. We both feel bad when we feel like we're not being productive. I know this about you. It's something I feel too. And there's something about just sitting with a book and reading a book where I'm like, I'm not doing anything else. And I feel bad about it. So I don't know, like, I feel like audiobooks help with that. But then sometimes I'm like, there's nothing left to do. Like clean my house. I can't vacuum because then I can't hear as well.
Yeah.
Like I've already done all this stuff. So I guess I'll, I don't know. So I will say, and I keep referencing Jade in this video, but she's the one that got me into like listening to audiobooks while you read, because it helps you stay more focused also, I think, because you're accessing both like your, you're listening, but also whatever, you get what I'm saying. So I feel like it helps you stay more focused. And then as a result, you like, not that the goal should be to read faster. I don't know. I don't like, I wouldn't ever want to make a video about reading faster. I think there are definitely tips and tricks for people that need it. But my goal when reading for reviewing, or my goal for reading just for like the pleasure of reading, my goal isn't to read really fast. But I do want to make sure I don't get distracted. And so having that audiobook to listen to while, I want to add though, I can't do that at one time speed. If I'm doing something, I listen to the audiobook closer to one, maybe like 1.5 or so, depending on the narrator. Sometimes they talk really slow.
Yes,
but when I'm listening while reading, then I can speed it up a lot, because obviously you read faster usually than they talk. But anyway, that was a whole other side thing.
That Andrew doesn't read normally, but he downloaded Norse Mythology by
Neil Gaiman.
Yes. He's really on this Norse thing. I'm like, if you like it, I love it. I was in the car and he put it on. He had it on 1 time speed. And I was like, you can speed this up. And he's like, no, I like it like this. And I was like, oh my, it was driving me mad. I was like, please. Please, because I mean, it sounds like molasses. But
I
same.
used to only listen to one time, and I'm talking like Michael Kramer, who talks really slow. I know.
The lowest I think I've ever done was like 1.25 or something, because the person, it had a really strong accent, it was like Irish, and I was like, okay, I cannot understand. But my normal is 1.5, maybe 1.75 if the person's super fast, if I'm doing other things. But if I'm reading along, then I can maybe do 2. 2 is usually my highest. But I easily have been, certain books I can't process well on audio. Like normally, like I tried to listen to Oathbringer, and I was like, I just need to read it. So usually like really high fantasy, I can't, or science fiction, I can't do on audio. It's just I need to read it and be able to look at it. But like thrillers, romance, like I'm listening to a historical fiction right now, and of course nonfiction, love to listen to on audio. But it's sometimes, even if I'm like really trying to pay attention, even if I'm just driving or something, sometimes I can just like space, and I'm like, hold up, what did they just say?
Yeah.
And then I need to go back. But yeah, reading an audio, the hardest thing for me is just reading an audiobook and not doing anything. Like I'll like lay on the couch and I have the audiobook and I'm like, I'm just listening to this book, but then I usually end up falling asleep and I'll wake up and I'm like, dang it,
I don't know
where did I leave off? I usually have to do something. That's why I love to like build on The Sims, because it's just something easy that I'm used to doing, and I can listen to an audiobook, because like I'm like, how do you just like sit? It's not me sitting and reading. I feel like I'm actively doing something, but just listening, I'm just always like, what do I do with my hands? I don't know what to do.
I think that too. I can't. I've tried, especially like if I have a headache or something, right? And it's just like you just want to close your eyes. You're not necessarily tired. But then I don't know. Then I'm like, I can't. Even when I'm sick, I've had people be like, "Oh, this will be so nice. You can catch up on your reading." I don't like reading when I'm sick. When I feel miserable, I'm like, I don't want to have to even think right now. I don't have to think about anything. I just want to lay down.
Read. I'm just like, yeah, I just will put something on that I've seen a million times and just like, ugh.
Exactly. Just like sit on the couch and do nothing.
Yeah, and I'm like, please take this away from me. But
is your husband is he, I call Sean a Viking man. I say he's my nice Viking man. Is because you mentioned Norse mythology, is that like his thing? Like his ancestors or something? Or
it's
from
not
the world?
a huge part. Like he just got his ancestry thing back and he's obsessed. So he does have Norwegian, but his is more English and Scottish, but still also that. But he's very much just he likes to learn about history, but he consumes more of his through like documentaries and podcasts instead of reading books, which it's fine. So he just got really into that in like the last year, and learning about it, and like even kind of like the religion of it. And I'm like, I love that for you. And so he'll be telling me stuff, and sometimes I space out. He says, you won't see the same way. And I'm like, He'll be like, and Odin and this. I'm like, I'm so great. So he's just on that. He's like been getting freaking Nordic Norse tattoos and stuff. I'm like, love, I'm so happy for you. Love that.
I will say, like my mom and I, when we were hanging out, we're trying so hard. We can't even get past my grandparents. They're from Cuba on her side, right? And we're trying like, and it's like Spanish names. They have like so many different names, and so it's not like, I feel like, I'm gonna generalize here, but like a lot of white people, it's like the same name. But Hispanic, it's like, oh, well, like they have their mother's name as like this part of their name and their father's name, and so a person like 1 or 2 generations back, it's really hard to even tell, wait, that's their father? Because their names look totally different.
Yeah.
And we couldn't find anything. It was so frustrating. Like we found like my grandpa's, like, like he lived in this area at this time. And my grandma, we can't find anything on. And I'm like, I've told you her children's names. I found the divorce between her and my grandpa, and we're like, cool. But anyway, like the other aspect of it, and my mom and I have theories about this because they're from Cuba, and like my grandpa was a little bit older when he came to America. And so he, I think, had this kind of fear of being open about who your family members are. And like, I don't know, they're very secretive. And so my mom, for the longest time, because he, I think, as far as we know, was an only child, but he had step siblings, and he would mention the stepsister. And then one day he mentioned his brother. Like my mom's an adult, and she's like, "What? You had a brother?" Like, had no idea. But then they get like quiet about it, or you'll find out stories that you're like, "What? That happened?" So they're very secretive, and you can't find out anything about them. And so we found a man though. So there's a thing in my family. This is so off topic, but this is interesting. We found this random, like, it linked me to somebody else's tree that you can see, like, oh, why am I linked to this tree? I don't know why it linked me to this other person's family tree, because I'm like, I don't know any of these people. But there was a man, my grandpa's father's name apparently was Longo, but my mom's like, I don't know how it's spelled. I don't know. So there was a person whose name was, one of their names was Sololongo, and you're like, okay, but Longo could be short for that. Like maybe it's linking me to this or something. And in my family, there's mostly a lot of women on the Cuban side, but like every generation has one man and they look the same. They're so obviously related, right? And the picture of this man looks exactly like my cousin, who's like the man of this generation on my mom's side, right? Exactly. Like I sent it to Sean and I was like, does this not look just like my cousin? And he's like, that looks exactly like your cousin. Like a split second, he thought it was like my cousin with a mustache. It's so weird. They like, and my mom at one point like just covered that part, and you would swear you're looking at. It's so crazy, but I'm like, this could just
not on your tree.
We're like, this could just be some random Cuban man. Like, it might not be. We're like analyzing it really in detail and stuff. It kind of stinks, you know. Like, I would love to know more about that, but like some weird. I feel like there was kind of weird stuff on that side, and then my dad's side was like a whole mix of things. And you know, we talked about earlier being part Native American too. Like a lot of my ancestors on my dad's side, you can find where they're buried because they're buried in like this. I think it's like a Choctaw cemetery. So that's nice because there's the records there, but it only goes so far back because then it's like I told you, which I guess the Choctaw prefer not to call it the Trail of Tears because the Trail of Tears was more Cherokee, like that area, but it's more like the forced removal, I think I read, is what they prefer to call it because it affected them in different areas than the Trail of Tears or something. But either way, like one ancestor of mine died on the Trail of Tears. And she must have been pregnant at the time because it says like one of her babies, like it has the date as just like, you know, alive and then dead. So I don't know if they were stillborn or if the mother and the baby died giving birth or whatever. But her daughter, it says on her gravestone, Trail of Tears survivor. And you're like, cool. What a thing to be known for. It's awesome being part Native American. Yeah, lovely. But then, you know, then you're like, I know there's some white people, obviously, in my ancestors. And like Sean, he was like, I don't want to go too far back because he was like super white. You know, he's like, it's nice to see pictures of my grandpa in high school, but I don't want to go too far back because. And then sure enough, you know, you're finding people that you're like, he's like, oh no, because they're like living in like Georgia or something. And you're like, I mean, yeah, you know it, you know, like, you know, if you're white and your ancestry goes far enough back in America, there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to like what you see. Yeah. And same goes for, I'm sure, the white side of my family, right? Yeah. But really fun fact for like the end of our video, what a weird side thing I got into here. But if it's all correct, Sean, because, you know, you always want to find that like famous person in history that you're linked to. Calvin, as in Calvinism, the religion. Mm-hmm. Sean, if it's all correct, links all the way back to John Calvin's brother. So like his brother's line is possibly goes into Sean, like is a descendant. So I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I mean, maybe that's not to anybody else, but
it still is to have like a significant, you know, tie to something in history. I want to do something. I just don't know how far back it could go.
I need a professional.
Interesting. Looking at different people and kind of just wish we could time travel. I just want to go see things. That's history.
Yeah, I think that Sean he's called me his Cuban princess. Like this hairstyle I do, he's like, it's your Cuban princess hairstyle. It's not a Cuban thing. It's just he knows I'm half Cuban. So he knows. So he calls me Cuban princess. He'll call me like his Native American princess because I'm part Native American. And then when we were in Ireland, my real last name, because on the internet I have a pseudonym. So my real last name is actually like, I found this coaster that has a family crest for my real last name. And so I'm like, am I Irish too? And then Sean started calling me his Irish princess. And so he just always calls me like whatever princess. And so when I was doing the ancestry stuff, I'm like, I think I have a decent amount of family members from England. So I'm like, I guess I'm also your English princess. Like, just listing all the
different.
Yeah.
That is so smart. I should have used a pseudonym instead of my real name, but it's too late now. I'm here.
When I started, I was teaching still lessons, and I like really didn't want my students to find me. Not that I say anything like really super inappropriate, or I don't know. It's not like I'm reviewing a bunch of erotica or something where if a parent found it, they'd be like, this is horrible or something. Not that the parents are prudes, but still. So anyway,
too little too late for me.
Yeah, I think I told you, I don't remember if I mentioned this on camera, but one of my students, when she was going into college, the person that was going to be assigned to her as her roommate, I guess had a booktube channel. So during her lesson, she's like, I don't know, they've got like a channel with books. It's called like booktube or something. And she was like worried the girl would want to be like vlogging all the time. And in my head, I'm like, please don't find me. Like, I was so worried.
You're like, it's fine. It's fine. Never heard of it. It's fine.
Yeah. For the longest time, I mean, people in my life had no idea I had a channel. I feel like a lot of people, it was always really fun trying to describe it to my dad. My dad, he was so cute and like didn't understand the internet really at all. And I would try to explain to him like how you make money doing it. And he would just be like, well, you keep at it, kiddo. Like he just was like, good for you. But he didn't really understand.
Fun. So obviously Andrew knows. I have like a random cousin who knows. How did she know? I don't know. And a handful of people in my real life, but like most people don't know, and I don't want them to know.
Yeah.
I don't want my mother to know. I don't know. I just feel like I would feel, I don't know. So most people don't know, or they don't watch it, because this is so random, but Christmas, we had pictures taken for Christmas cards, me, Andrew, and Nigel, and we ordered them, and then they ended up they got messed up, and we got them, and they were all blank, so they had none of our picture on it, and we were like, dang, because we ordered a ton to send, because I have a ton of family, and then his family, so we just made like a video. I made a video putting together like pictures and videos of us throughout the year. It was like 5 minutes. And I was like, well, how am I going to send it to them? He was like, just on our YouTube channel. I was like, well, I don't want them to find it. So I sent them all the link, like it's an unlisted video. And nobody said anything besides like, oh my God, love the video. Merry Christmas. I'm like, maybe no one looked.
You just have to hope that like YouTube doesn't recommend.
I know. I'm like, please don't. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I know that too. It's not like I'm saying anything like, it's just I don't know. Oh my gosh, sorry. Luna's like tucking her head behind the pillows now. It's really cute. Yeah, I always felt the same. Like there was a couple of people who knew, but not very many. Because I don't know. It's just like kind of awkward, I guess.
Yeah.
So like maybe it ties back to the not imposter syndrome, but the just like not knowing how to deal. I don't know. I went to visit a friend from high school recently and her fiance, and they had a couple friends over, and they're being super nice. And they're like, she's written a book. Like, will you sign my book? And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, and then they were like, that's so cool. And they're like, I'm going to order a couple copies. And then they're like, next time we see you, like, can you sign ours? And I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. I'm like, what if you don't like it though? Like, and So I always feel weird about
not me. It wasn't mine. I didn't write it. Yeah, Andrew has told people from work, and I'm like, why would you tell them that? And he was like, because you're doing great. And I'm like, no, I don't. And then we were at this thing with one of his, someone he worked with who's now, they moved back to the States. And they're like, yeah, me and my wife watched your live stream last night. And I was like,
I know.
Please don't, like.
I have to say, a video, like, I haven't gone back and watched it yet, currently, since my dad passed away, but I'm happy I have it. It's the video I made a long time ago where I wrote out really really intense fantasy names that have interesting spelling or are really long, and then I had my dad guess how you would pronounce them because he was not like at all into that stuff. And so he actually did pretty well, but it was always really entertaining. But like the whole process of recording a video with him, that video I feel like highlights it, because at the end he's like, well, are we done now? And I was like, yeah, we're done. And he's like, and then he was being silly. He's like, do I get a cookie now? Like, and it's adorable. Yeah. And then I was like, we don't have any cookies. And he's like, what? And then I was like, we have muffins though. We have chocolate chip muffins. He's like, okay, I'll take one of those. And then he's like, this was weird. Like he's saying this while it's still recording. And it was adorable. And I'm glad I have that memory.
Yeah.
But, yeah. In case anybody was wondering, my dad was not the angry man I mentioned earlier. Just, just to be clear, not the same person, different person. But anywho, this was fun. I feel like I made that really awkward there at the end. But it's been over 2 hours now. I feel like that last hour just like there were so many topics. So I know there were so many topics we could have done entire videos about. So I feel bad. I feel like we didn't even answer certain questions. I feel like I more conclusively talked about peanut butter M&Ms than I did about imposter syndrome or the other stuff. I don't know. But
they were touched on. Okay.
We also talked a lot about our dogs.
This is important content.
It is.
People want to know. That's how you started off.
Anyway, it's interesting that two people who both are very kind of antisocial, don't feel like they deserve things, don't want people to know they even have channels, like that we're like, let's do a video together.
We connect, we relate, it works.
I'll shout out really quick, like Alan. I'm always like, Alan's friends with everyone. Like, managed to be friends with
energy. I can't get it. I can't understand.
Yeah, I know. At some point, I'm like, I've already talked a lot to someone today. I've talked to 2 people today. That's a lot for me.
I'm spent. But I will say in these situations, and I feel like all of the people that I consider friends are understanding of when I don't immediately respond or take time. Like the other day I texted a friend I hadn't talked to like from back home in weeks, but our relationship is fine like that. Like it's not like we feel betrayed by the other person. And so I think that's important too when you're like, oh, people. To have people who understand that peopling is a lot.
Yeah, my friend from high school that I mentioned a second ago, so considerate. And I feel like also people who have been really understanding and considerate of like last year and how there's still things to do since my dad's passing that you have to get done. And it's like kind of emotionally taxing. And then I already feel not emotionally taxed, but like it's an effort to be social for me. So then sometimes I just don't want to be social. And I so appreciate people being understanding of that. But I kind of in my mind, I'm always like, why do I have any patrons? These people are angels. Like, why do they support me? Because I hardly ever have the time like to talk. And I don't know. Thank you to my patrons. They're all the nicest people. But anyway, you got your hair retwisted recently, right? I was going to tell you. You didn't get the chance, or you did?
No, I did.
You did? Yeah. Thought so.
I was very happy. Happy to. I don't want to have to do it myself because I have no talents. Because I'm like, it's either this or I'm going to shave my head. I'm so sick of it.
I mean, that was good.
I might. It's an option. But, oh my goodness. I wasn't tired. It took us down. And I was like,
That's
I'm going to finish a book. I probably will fall asleep on the couch like I did last night trying to finish this daggone book.
You're just it's funny that you feel similarly about being social because you also, I feel like everybody wants to talk to you. You're always doing live shows.
I know. I was telling my friend who was like, whew, I'm tired. Like I did a live and then I also was on someone's podcast. And I always enjoy these things. Like I get anxious before them because I just have a lot of anxiety, but they always are super fun. Always get off of them and I'm always super happy that I did it. But leading up to it, I'm like, oh my God, why did I do this? Why did I do this? I have another one. Why did I do this? And then I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do another one for another whatever. And then like last week, so it was the week before, and then last week I was like, okay, I don't have any. And then the trigger warning, content warning conversation came up and Bethany messaged me. I'm like, okay, yes, I want to do it. And then I was like, Jessica, why did you do that? But I mean, I feel honored
for that one.
And listen to this book. So I'm like, sure. And earlier was random because I was trying to study for something and I was like, let's sprint together.
I want to say really quick, last time we told people who watched all the way to the end to leave certain emojis. So I feel like we have to, of course, have the dog emoji, right? That kind of is what kicked us off. Headphones, because we talked about audiobooks. We talked about ancestry. What could represent that? Like an old lady or an old man?
Yeah. I was trying to think, is there an image? There's not an image or a candy. Is there a candy emoji?
There's something with that's a good one. Candy.
Maybe just those.
Probably won't look like M&M's. It'll probably be like a twisty emoji.
Yeah, those. If you made it all the way here, we appreciate you.
Thank you. That should be the thumbnail. Just kidding. We have to get it simultaneously. Just we both just doing. Thank you. Okay, bye everybody. That was a really classy ending. Bye.